Welcome everyone. I am Myrene Murphy-Zarzana. I am an assistant professor of English and the director of the creative writing program here. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today for the first reading of the semester in the SMSU Visiting Writers Series. Today we will hear the poetry read by our Elena Prieto and Saara Myrene Raappana, and followed by time for your question and answers. Our Elena Prieto was born in Venezuela with dual citizenship. Her family moved to the United States when she was 4, and she has lived in this country ever since. After a good deal of moving around when she was very young, her family settled in Norfolk, Nebraska, and that's where she grew up. Prieto earned her undergraduate degree in English from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and her master's degree from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Her work has appeared in the Rondo Roundup, OVS Magazine, Moon City Review, and In a Face to Meet the Faces, an anthology of contemporary persona poetry. Please welcome Elena.
Thank you. You have to bear with me, I am short, so I probably will not be easily seen. But thanks to the microphone, I will be easily heard, so that's always nice. So as you mentioned, I have moved around a lot, and that continued even through college. I started at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and then I moved, and then I moved some more, and then I moved some more. As a result, I am not overly fond of moving, or traveling, or anything that involves leaving my home. So I was thinking about that one day, and I realized how sad a life my suitcases have. I've seen suitcases with all kinds of wonderful travel stickers on them. I've envied the passports of other people, but only as far as their passports go. And I realized that my suitcases will never be as happy as the suitcases of other people. So this is my poem, Suitcase. Believe it or not, I'm not a pack animal. Most times I'm alone in the dark, waiting beneath a forest of hanging clothes, brushing my hide with poly-blend promises. Oh, to be man's best friend, pulled along at his heel, obedient, faithful, useful. Oh, to be useful and not locked away. I'm not a dumb animal. I remember Texas, Missouri, Canada, hotels, car trips, but especially the full moon tipping her lovely head down to us in Colorado. How I wanted to herd those stars, hold them for you. I won't bite. Pass your hands lovingly over my worn brown leather once more. I'll lay on the center of your bed, your coonhound, cattle dog, gazelle hound, your retriever, the one who will always, with a soft mouth, fetch your slippers. This next poem deals with the subject of death a little bit, and of course we all think about that, and as writers we all write about it, at least in some way, if tangentially. And I was kind of considering how when we die, it's other people who really mark our death. It's not us. Time traveler. Will we know, as knitters know, they finished the last row? Are we a completed project to ourselves or only to others? 180 more snapped pencils, torn fingernails, nibbled berries, each legitimate dangers as we measure our days, until the final days, different hours marked by others as our last. When will I see her that final time? The last handshake, bad pun, slice of cake, I will only know after, a time traveler of hindsight. A theory of gravitation where I am stationary while she moves faster than the speed of light. 2 words everyone knows, carved deep on the heart of the last page. The body's water. And now you will feel a gush, he says, of water, but it's blood. I register his whispered warning to my husband, love's alarm folded, tucked away like a fresh towel. Nurses wipe and rub my daughter, prize apple, wrinkled nymph, work for her first gasp and wail. Come on, I say. My next breath held in my foamed cage of lung, until she gives the air the first taste of her trembling, wet voice. This next one is special to me because I have a weakness for scientists. I actually started as a biology major, and I did that for 3 years before I switched. I am not good at chemistry and physics, as it turns out. I really, really liked genetics, but it was not to be. And my first love really always was writing, so I went to that. But like I said, I love science still, and I love scientists in particular. So this one is about Charles Darwin. He's well known as the father of evolution. He is less well known for his views about animals as feeling creatures with souls. He was fond of telling his fellow scientists that animals clearly experienced feelings. They didn't just react to pain as a stimulus. He actually was quite controversial for his views. Charles Darwin. He's standing in his garden at Down House in Kent, but he's not studying large beds of Linaria vulgaris, not taking notes on growth rates of one bed compared to another. He is not standing with a colleague expounding the virtues of cross versus self-pollination. Today, Charles Darwin holds a fallen fledgling. He is unconcerned with which species of songbird, its traits, Latinate names for feather anatomy. The throat is weak and can't lift an impossibly large head. The beak opens and closes slightly. Barely audible peeps, arrow-like, pierce the listening air. Though mother has been dead since his 8th year, Charles turns towards the house and looks for her. He wants to ask how to revive this trembling galaxy of thin feathers, the darkening milky planet of the eye. This next one is actually about a small man-made lake in the town where I grew up. It's a small town, as she mentioned, Norfolk, Nebraska. I was amazed when we moved there that they actually have a really, really great 4th of July celebration. I thought that the fireworks were amazing. And every year when it wasn't rained out, we went. Skyview Lake, 4th of July. If this were the ocean, there would be krill. Luminous, wispy floss between whale teeth, microscopic waltz snuffed finally in the belly, like those fireflies cresting the darkened hill. The crowd spaces itself, spreads blankets, unwraps sandwiches. Before this is over, we'll see anemones in the sky. First the flash, then the breeze-torn curls of smoke. For one evening, calm waters and pearly constellations winking in our nets. The brooch of the moon, cool and silken in our hands. This next poem is kind of special to me because it was inspired by a dear friend of mine who was in the program with me, though she's a fiction writer. Her name is Jillian. And she was really fond of "so's your mama" jokes, but not in the way that you might know them, where you say back and forth, "Your mama's so fat that blah, blah, blah." No. What she would do is just throw out a "so's your mama" at random. So somebody would say something like, "This sandwich really sucks. I wish that I were at home." And she'd say, "So's your mama." It didn't always make sense, but sometimes she would throw it out there and it would stick. So, "So's your mama." What he said to me over breakfast this morning turned the cereal in my mouth into bullets. I swallowed them, but what I really wanted was to spit them out with the rat-tat-tat of revenge. His eyes, lately rigid as the spoon in my bowl, might finally soften. He wasn't always unyielding. Does he remember the times he apologized, whether wrong or not? I threw tuna casserole at the wall when I had seasoned it poorly, and he said, "Sorry," and took me to the seafood place with the starched napkins. Now he knocks me down when I stand in his way. He knocks me down because he isn't watching his step. Now he says things like, "It was your fault for standing there. You're being ridiculous." And I say, "So's your mama." And he says, "She's not here. How would you know?" And I say, "If she's alive and breathing, she's being ridiculous." If he knew vinegared coffee, salted donuts, and other acts of culinary sabotage ran freely in my thoughts like orange juice from a carton, would he take me somewhere for a Western omelet and bottomless coffee? despite my having said, "So's your mama," when he said that was unnecessary. Would he stop looking at me like I'm a napkin that fell on the floor during his soliloquy? Wreck the first act by drawing too much attention? Like I refuse to pick myself up. The next one is a persona poem. It is not the persona poem that is in the anthology that Myrene mentioned, but it's special to me, so I'll go ahead and read it. Insomnia has daddy issues. She's been waving it in my face since yesterday morning, the tease, and she says she's installing a pole right in the middle of the bedroom. It's not that she's not sexy, she is, but what's that to me? All I want is for her to come to bed, stroke my hair, maybe even tell me a story. I tell her, but she keeps saying, "Watch this," while she humps the wall, strokes her own breasts, and gyrates endlessly to Britney Spears. "I think you have the wrong audience here," I grumble as I flop onto my left side, but she's not listening. She's snorting coke off my new cookbook, pulling on my knee-high boots, and she stops to watch the sun steam over the horizon. "You can't say that's not beautiful." And her voice is slightly irritated, possibly depressed. Insomnia's high energy and courageous spirit, she's convinced, are underutilized. She often says, "Sleep is overrated." "Aren't you glad you were up to see this?" She jiggles into her coffee-stained jacket, grabs her purse, and with a "see you later, probably tonight," leaves me. And I turn off the alarm clock before it can sound, like bells glaring in the sun, like bells glaring in the sun. It was not as bad as it is in California now, but where I was living before I moved here in southern Illinois, we had a pretty significant drought last summer. And there were constant alerts, you know, don't set fires, don't do this, don't do that, because it was so dry. And that summer, I had 3 fires in close proximity to my home. One was caused by an electric company working at the same time as someone else was clearing trees, and they knocked a tree down and it hit a power line that was being worked on, and that line came down and started a fire. That got taken care of pretty quickly. However, across a field across from my home, there is a trailer park, and they had one trailer that just went completely up. And we knew it because of the fire engines that went screaming by our home while our baby was sleeping. So, landscape with drought and a trailer park fire. We used to sweep the porch, but it's been a while. Where a while measures in years, and soon means never. Dead juniper piles in the corners, feathers stick between boards, and I want to warn him, glance down to see he's already standing barefoot in poison ivy. A black cloud rises, sparking, and mothers try to keep kids back, snatching at hems and collars of sleeveless tees. Ammunition groans and pops, while a man circled over and over by his barking dog thinks, "This can't be happening." And a fireman thinks only through practiced aim. Flames lick the plate of brown turf clean, and we yearn like candles to consume the oxygen separating us, smoke the needling wasps and hornets from each other's dusty corners. This poem is actually written for a friend of mine. He's actually a very well-published poet named Michael Meyerhofer. He and I argued over something, and do you know how you can tell that you've had a stupid argument if 10 years later you have no idea what it was about? So, my friend and I argue over something stupid. Our feelings are mutually hurt. His girlfriend invites me to dinner, and we all laugh over mulled cider, sigh over wine, grow serious over chops of thin pork, pass mushrooms around until none are left. As I say my goodbyes and repeat my thanks, my friend asks if I ever borrowed that anthology I gave him as a gift. I don't usually like anthologies, but this is my favorite, he says, and he asks me to keep his earmarks. He hands the book to me face up, an exposed belly held between us. It's too late. We take what was once ours from the locked beach house and cross the ramshackle shore. We pack ourselves in the stale car, the broken shells we collected a muted pile in the lot, naked and disappointed for everyone to see. Be my tongue in my mouth. Tell me my own secrets, say what you want to hear, then lick my salty lips, but just once, and without irony or malice. You lied once, and you will never admit it. I wind the clock backward until it breaks, and neither of us laugh. Combat baby is the sound of your teeth clenched together, the scratch of your beach-gritted hand on my thigh, the press of your chest against the alarm clock of my breast. We are ticking down, a mess of green and red wires. When you turn your back, I renegotiate terms with my middle finger, but you know that. Just as well as you know my pickpocket kiss. Let's have a taste. You try to disarm me with big score promises and a sea glass smile, but you can't lure me back to that house. I finally know when enough is enough. This next one is a little hard to explain. It's kind of jagged in a way. When we first moved here, I had a baby just a few months before, and I was experiencing some pretty significant postpartum depression. And I was stuck in the house, and the house was full of boxes, and the baby was always screaming because he was very colicky. So this references that difficulty, but it also references the January moon, which is called the full moon in January, which is called the wolf moon. January moon. Wolves pace the halls panting against plaster, gnawing banisters to jagged barbs, not quite toothpicks, less than sawdust. Saliva taunts me. Hinterland of teeth, stone caverns, broken lanterns, stick figures hefting spears whisper, gods, stars, frost, fire in every corner. I gnaw on cartilage and hock joints. Snow crunches at my window, rasping about sleep. The hair twitches, nearly wakes, and stills. Rest is for the devoured. My night is counted in days. We are all claw and underbelly. Okay, this last one is the persona poem that's in the anthology that Marianne showed you. And I hope that if you get a chance to read this anthology, that you will. There are some really amazing poets in here. In particular, there are a lot of poems in here that have been previously published as collections or in other literary magazines. There's a poem in here by Jake Adam York, and we lost him last year. And he's an amazing poet, so I hope you'll take the time to read his poem. This poem is in the persona of Marianne Cotton, and she was the first woman to be called a Black Widow. Courting Marianne Cotton. When Marianne Cotton died on the 24th of March, 1873, she had been accused of killing 4 of her husbands and almost 3 times as many children. From Marianne Cotton, the Black Widow, the most evil women in history. I walk on men like glass. Bouquets of flowers might win me. Bouquets of flowers won't save you. I'll bring them back graveside, dried petals to kiss the turned earth. Back to husbands I walked on like parlor floors or dried bones, powdered marrow slick and soft on the point of my heel. Inheritance powder, arsenic oxide, rat poison. I spill children like milk. Convenience is acquiring a new life at will. New husbands snared by the smudge of life growing within. Sign here, dear. Your future, a swarm of black umbrellas, little boxes for little children who might have parted their hair like you, might have worn red ribbons or bow ties, small hourglasses waiting to be tipped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Sarah Myrene Raappana was born and raised in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and so tell me how you pronounce that again.
Oh, Uber.
She's a Uper. She received her MFA from the University of Florida and served with the Peace Corps as an English teacher in southwestern China. Her poetry has been published widely in such publications as Harvard Review, Online, Iron Horse Literary Review, Spoon River Poetry Review, Subtropics, and the Gettysburg Review. Raappana's poems have appeared in the Sheshem Press Artist Broadside series in both 2012 and 2014, and her poetry reviews can be found in the American Book Review and the Rumpus. 2 of her poems were recently nominated for the Pushcart Prize. Also, last week, she was named a finalist for a poem she submitted to Arrivals and Departures, a poetry film project that will be held at the newly renovated St. Paul Depot. She is also the co-editor of Cell Poems, which you can check out at cellpoems.org. A poem in 140 characters, and you can also submit to that. Also, a quick plug for a community writing workshop which she will be offering. You can talk to her about that afterwards. That will be starting on Tuesday, February 25th, and it will go from 6 to 8. And it's $80, and she'll be talking about developing your ideas, the art of revision, leaving your comfort zone, getting published, working after the workshop ends, and writing out loud. So for people in the community who are looking for that kind of a writing community. Sarah lives in Marshall, Minnesota with her husband, Eric DeWeese, who is a member of the English faculty here at SMSU. Please welcome Sarah. Hi, how are you? Good, good.
So it's true, I am from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm a Uber. Have you been to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan? Yeah. It's chilly. More snow, less wind than Marshall. So this poem takes place in the UP, like several of my poems, and this is one of the ones that was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. It was nominated by Wayne State University Press, which put out an anthology, which is awesome, called The Way North. It's all writing from people who are either from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or who now live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And this is called Stuck. Cousin, all I know of geography is what Uncle Seppo, on Air Force leave, carved in the sauna wall about Thai girls. So now, as we shoulder boost your pickup, I imagine headlands due east, ridges fading like thighs. Tell me I can gun this engine and get something more than mud. What I know of migration is a tune flying circles in my brain. Seppo says, by the Mekong, he saw a wasp with humming wings. It ate cow flesh. It chewed through lumber. Our sky is sandpaper teaseling through the birches. We're slivers in the thumb of this off-ramp. Your ex-wife ignores your calls, pulls wood from her finger quicks with baking soda salve. We have no choice, cousin. We lift and lift. Maybe between sobs you say, I don't have anywhere to go. Maybe there's no answer for that except to push you home. Beneath the sauna bench, a wasp is caught in an orb weaver's web. There's thrashing. That's disbelief, legs jerking themselves out to get free. It's hopeless. Still, I can't but root for him to rev up and make a go with all the force of his life, out, out, and away. This one is about cleaning fish, which was my least favorite thing to do as a child. Least favorite. Okay. Spawning season. I used scissors to behead them, then the dull back of a puka blade to flake the floor with what in death were shiniest. My bullshit childhood chore, to find and tug the slimy cord of life, spleen, air bladder, and from the purchased throat, the heart's soft nugget. I was raised by women who could gut any fish, told me males were quick, but females, bellies blister pale, would spill complications of clandestine viscera. My mother combed roe from my hair and said, "Flood. I feel a flood coming." In the aquarium's ocean corridor, I hugged a notebook to my chest. Jason backed me with a smile into the corner, describing cuttlefish. I wanted him like hell and let him tell me what I knew already. That to mate, cuttles went red, in frigid alcoves black. That their venom could steal anybody's breath. But his eyes like casting spoons, his thumb that probed the dimple of my back and tugged me up. The flush of air, exposure, so I ran. That night, I lay alert, heart like a hook in my throat. This one, I said earlier today, most of my poems are lies. They're not true. You know, like they come from true things and they're in true places, but they're not true. But this one is true. This is about an incident that happened in a small town where Eric and I were living in, was it 2010? 2010? 2010. Where a young man took some of the high school students in his class hostage, some of his classmates, he took them hostage in the school. And that was difficult for the whole community. It was a thing. So this is the poem that I wrote about that, and it's also one of the Pushcart Prize nominated poems. It was in the Iron Horse Literary Review, which is a really good review, and is also like $5 an issue, which is super cheap. So, fun. Okay. Canticle of Waitresses, Waiting. This is how we herded by the waitress station, waiting, as the town, turned down to one by snow, settled like a gown that smothered all that ailed us. How we first heard about the hostages on Facebook. And then the town knelt down to zero, still as snow once it resolves itself to ground. How the sidewalk still needed seating with rock salt. How even when a person stands still, they can slip. How we counted the seeds of our blessings. How our blessings rebounded off the booths like buckshot. How we each sometimes rebound into being a country of oneself. How we other times are oneself of a city. How only below zero can we remember September as that country where we save daylight like fat over our muscles. How a woman ran at the chained gym doors to save her daughter. How she dropped on the unseated walk. How we'll remember her legs as a fleet of hummingbirds skidding through snow. How sometimes to give something a shot means kill it. How other times it means just close your eyes. I should say also that while the hostage taker did die, no one else did, so it was mostly okay. This is the poem that is a finalist in the Arrivals and Departures project, which is being put on through Motion Poems. Do you guys know Motion Poems? Super cool. Motionpoems.com. Poems, movies. Blam. Together. At last. Okay. So it's a really exciting project, and I'm really excited to be a finalist, and I'm really excited to see the movies, regardless of whether or not my poem is in there. It's going to be awesome. Okay. Landfall at my childhood home. It seems the front yards looped the earth 12 times for every year I've been away. The surface, snowy in its white-blue light, but rilled by flying ice. A stranger's rover ticking in a crater where my sandpile stood. Footprints pock this lunar regolith. I was mistaken to assume that places, being placed, wouldn't revolve. The house lists right like some Apollo, restless on her struts. It holds flash-dried fruit and dials and clocks, but also screens designed to contact Earth. An Afghan warms the inside of a cabinet in case travelers need to touch something of home. Okay. This is a little one. Do people get perms anymore? No? No? Yes? No? I had a perm once. It was really, really bad. Actually, I had like 4 really bad perms. Yeah, okay. Home perm. Inside the bonnet dryer's tonic of heat, my mother steeps. Pretend she's not the snag-strung loom of whiskey teacup afternoons. She doesn't wring her hands or exhale gloom. She doesn't vex from room to room. She blooms in a blush of cheek, in the headstrong calm that cleaves glamour and beast. Teased out, how artfully she blinks and darts her eyes, as if the mirror were the threshold of awakened bride's surprise, then rises, unweighted, the way a rip, zipped by a suture, straightens. Now I will continue with the mother poems. This one is actually a retelling of the Demeter-Persephone myth. In case anyone's not familiar or you want to be reacquainted with it. Demeter, Greek goddess of the harvest, Persephone, her daughter. Most of the myths say that Persephone was kidnapped by the evil Hades, god of the underworld. And Demeter was so bereft at her absence that she stopped making anything grow, and that's why we have winter. Good, good, okay. Winter correspondence. Demeter to Persephone. You pulled that man up like a root, snake-limbed, sulfuric, old, and followed him down south, foolish as a thresher tilling snow. Iris tested sunlight, microwaved Lake Huron in a bowl. Still your toes grew icicles. He offered rugs that melted snow. You write, call me a chainsaw. True, when I try to coo, I growl, but saplings don't run when groves rumble. They sprinkle leaves like snow. Winter's my new daughter. In our kitchen, sleet blows. No lust can smolder hot enough to soften her bricks of snow. I soak cod in birch ash, won't eat. I toss lutefisk to crows and shiver. I cough up blizzards, spreading viruses of snow. I do jumping jacks lying down. My second go at molding angels. Both times, dear girl, I've failed. I've just built walls of snow. For you, I'd drive as far as I could go, tire chains groaning road to road. But I fear your trail's gone cold. It died in drifts of snow. Now, Persephone to Demeter. Your email says you've chilled the tussock sedge, taught it not to grow, that the bow saw of you, mother, carves angels from hard-packed snow. You grew me like your pear tree, boughs split, espaliate in rows like candelabras. My elbows shook in leaves as crisp as snow. Crowned in sweat and deet, I heard mother's souls. They pluck love's me not from asphodel, Dunes of lonely petals shroud my feet like snow. They say your new child's frigid, throws fits, flops to the ground and groans no matter how your twilight skirts shush across her cheeks of snow. I wish I'd met my winter sister. We'd make forts of pillows and fjords. But if I'm home, she'll vanish like a dime dropped in snow. You say my love's a combine that tries to throttle grain from snow. It's true. Though wheat frosts over, love works that field down to its bones. I dial your number, Mama. I tap Morse code into the phone. I just hear static. Your lines are down. They died in drifts of snow. I have 3 more poems for those of you who are like, God, when will the poems end? 3. Okay, this one, okay, normally I would not tell you this because if you were reading it, you would be able to look at it, but you're not. Every sentence is a pangram, which means that every sentence has at least once every letter of the alphabet. Which sounds easy, except there's J. J is so difficult, for real. Okay. So, pastoral. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. English language pangram. The lazy dog, embittered some, therefore human-like, relaxes in the wild endives and sizes up a turquoise-crested jay. The turquoise jay atop the fence mulls over the tragedy of diligence. For example, house painters wrecking their backs to glaze other people's ranch houses. Having wooed, where woo is juxtaposed with fuck, his lass, in the quilted plateau of their trailer bed, the shepherd whistles his lazy dog into the Humvee. Buttoning her jean shorts, his coquettish, weathered lass tallies the Xanax and diazepam she'll vend to every parson in the kinglet for maybe enough to pay the rent. The house painter, worn raw by Mirage White and QuickBooks-generated leisures, carries a bejesus load of Lunchables for his overanxious 5-year-old. That anxious, yard-bred kid, scanning the Quamash buds for werewolves, sees the joint grass's pointed tips unblunted by gas-fed sickles and is dazzled. That anxious, the fox, once quick, zones out within the ragweed with a leg of hijacked lamb, hoping against evidence that the easy life's in reach. Picture it. The meadow weeps, for it is morning, and the Lunchables, for they're humid, and the painter, over tomorrow's blank expanse of sheetrock, and the dog, horizontal, tastes the jonquils. The lass agonizes, for she's fucked, and the shepherd, without the meds she hawked. But the jay serenades the pasture's every quark, while the child and fox sit opposite each other in the yellow air. Okay, so one thing that I find super interesting and fun is that jokes and poems are pretty much the same bag of tricks. There is not a lot of difference. So, to be sure, before I read you this poem, I will tell you some jokes. Dude walks into a bar, dog under his arm, sign that says, talking dog for sale, $10, right? Bartender is like, whatever, not true. And the dog's like, what's up? And the bartender's like, whoa, talking dog, what's your story? The dog says, well, I figured out that I could talk really early on, and I wanted to do good for my country, so I joined the CIA. I was a super secret spy traveling from country to country, watching spy things and reporting them back to the government. But then the life was just too hard. I had to retire. So then I was an inspirational speaker and I traveled everywhere, just chilling out and saying inspirational dog stuff, and had some kids. And now I'm just retired, hanging out, right? And the bartender looks at the dude and he's like, $10, like that's so cheap. That's an amazing dog. And the guy's like, whatever, all he does is lie. He never did any of that stuff. Okay, dog joke. Second joke. Well, you guys have all heard like priest, rabbi, and minister jokes? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, we'll skip those. Okay. Guy walks into a bar, pulls a tiny piano, and a tiny dude, about a foot tall, out of his pocket. Apparently it's a big pocket. Puts him on the bar. Little dude starts playing like really awesome piano, Gershwin, starts playing Gershwin, flawless, okay? The bartender's like, amazing, there was just a talking dog and now I have this, and where'd you get it? And the guy was like, well, I have a genie and a lamp, and I made a wish. And the bartender's like, can I try? And the guy's like, fine. Lamp, bartender rubs the lamp, genie says, what would you like? Bartender says, I want $1 million. And then poof, there's ducks everywhere. And the bartender's like, they're quacking like crazy. The bartender's like, what? And the guy's like, yeah, he's hard of hearing. Do you really think I asked for a 12-inch pianist? Okay, last joke. Pirate walks into a bar, eye patch, peg leg, steering wheel in his pants. Also a parrot. Steering wheel in his pants. Bartender says, aye, matey, you got a steering wheel in your pants. Pirate says, oh, arr, I know, it's driving me nuts. Okay, now we are ready for the poem. Okay, got it? All right. Stop me if. He won't describe the Chevy in the culvert, OE cans rebounding off shale chips, sirens. The beagle drops his sign, talking dog for sale, and sits and only says, my partner's in lockup. The priest, rabbi, and minister are taking sacrament for seasickness. Slurring, they drizzle myrrh and cassia oils on a foot-tall man who weeps over his Steinway. A spit bubble, a waft of tiger balm and scotch. Why the same Billy Joel songs every night? Where are all the torch singers? 14 congressmen, burnt out on screwing light bulbs in, traded their ladder for Guyaberas. Now they blow luck into their fists, toss snake eye after snake eye. The dog sniffs the air of soured Coors and pool chalk. He says the empty rye bottles on the bottom shelf remind him of the joke about the guy who chained himself to a reef to more securely watch the ocean, but realized too late. The routine of surf would bore him open, grind his spleen and liver into beach glass. The beagle whines the whine of wanting out, wanting the chase. The smell of sweaty rubber trailed from grass to patio, the sweet risk of cuspids in a Nike sole. He paused the sign. My buddy did the punchlines, so I'm half price. I tug my eye patch, spin the steering wheel idling in my pants, pour 2 shots. I laugh an echo of a laugh. Outside, the curb chuckles with red and blue lights, but just to be polite. It's heard this joke so many times before. And that's all the time I have, so thank you very much.
Stay up there, and they're going to take any questions that you might have.
We will now take any questions that you might have. This is your thing. Thank you. Question? It's done. Hi.
For Elena, how do you approach a persona poem? Like when you're, like, I mean, with the one about the Black Widow, I mean, do you do a lot of research, or like, how do you just have like, oh, that'd be a cool person, or how do you go about it?
Well, for some poems, I end up researching things just out of necessity. For persona poems, I usually end up being inspired by something I'm already looking at. In this particular case, I was reading a book called The Most Evil Women in History, so that really made things easy.
Who else was in there that you skipped?
That I skipped?
That you didn't write a poem about?
Well, so many. And
We'll talk about it.
I'm bad with names. But there's that woman I told you about who had Munchausen by proxy and killed 8 of her own children, essentially by continuing to smother them and then letting them go and then taking them to the hospital saying they're having breathing problems until she would finally end up killing them. And it took them a long time to figure it out.
That poem will come later.
For Sarah,
Yes.
How do you go about picking out your topics, like what you're gonna write about?
I don't know. Something, I think it's like, I've heard it described as the way, is it an oyster that makes a pearl? Something irritates my brain. And it keeps irritating my brain and until
You have
it
to
turns
write.
into something. Sometimes it's a word. Sometimes it's the idea that if there's a sentence, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, I have to write a poem that is all pangrams responding to that. Sometimes, actually, I've been experimenting lately in writing poems that people ask me to write. So that's different. So far, so good. Like, they'll be like, I want a poem with an owl and a quarter and all my feelings that I have about my mother. And I'm like, on it. So yeah, I think I get them from lots of places. Ooh, also cable television. It's a big one.
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from?
I am much like you. Things bother me until I have to write about them. Those things could be individual words. Those things could be the form. Occasionally,
form's good, yeah.
Yeah, occasionally pick up a form and just have to write it. That doesn't mean it turns out good, but sometimes it does. And sometimes I have to write about a person. Sometimes I have to write about a relationship. I think a lot of us have to do that just because. It's always nice to be the one who's writing the poem about a relationship because then you get to be the one who has the last say.
Never date writers. Hi.
Okay, so you guys both went to graduate school for poetry, but
Yes.
for people who are not graduate educated poets, when you know that you're ready to submit to a journal or to try, like you were the editor for some poems, how do you know? Do you have any advice for people who might want to try to break into it but really aren't sure when they're ready or how?
Here's what I did before I knew if I was ready. I was like, okay, not ready. And I sent out a bunch of poems and I planned for them all to get rejected because I was like, that's probably gonna happen and I'm gonna have to get used to it.
So you just jumped in.
Yeah, and they all got rejected. And actually at this point, I mean, like I always write a poem, like I make it as good as I can make it and I show it to poets and I do all the things to make it as good as I can make it. And then I send it out and sometimes after sending it out, I'm like, okay, 70,000 journals said no to that poem. It's not good enough, right? And then sometimes a journal accepts a poem that I don't think is done. Okay, I've done that a couple times, but I don't recommend it. When you send something to sell poems, it should be polished and beautiful. But please send us anything that you want. But yeah, like, jump in. see what happens. I mean, I do recommend submit to journals that you've read, because that'll give you a sense. Like there are some journals it doesn't make any sense for me to even send my best work to, because they're never going to publish it because they don't like snow or foxes or jokes.
Anagrams.
Yeah, they don't like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know?
Well, I, like you, had no expectations of success. You know that you're ready to send your stuff out when you have that low bar and you've already decided, I'm going to have a thick skin because people are going to say no to me and it's not personal. If you're willing to accept that it's not personal, then you've taken a good step and you're ready to send some stuff out.
Yeah. Because I think, like if you're really going to I'm going to get published, you got to just keep going.
Yes. And also, and we have talked about this,
We have.
Be ready for that first acceptance and it being absolutely not the poem you thought would get chosen.
Yeah. And then it's going to be horrible and you're going to get the journal, and you're going to be like, I'm really excited because I'm published, but I'm really ashamed because this sucks.
This is not the poem you're looking for. Move along.
Yes. So,
I hope that was helpful. Hi.
You both mentioned in your biographies, or was told about location, Nebraska, the UP, and being in other places. I'm just curious how landscape and other aspects of where you've been or are affects your writing, how it goes for you.
I think that it affects me a lot. I'm very interested in ideas of place. Like you mentioned, I grew up in Norfolk, Nebraska. I have a poem about detasseling corn. That would have never happened had I not lived there. But I also find that those poems happen when I look back. They don't really happen as much when I'm in the place, because as soon as I move to a new place, then I start to think about the old place and what I miss about it and what I remember about it, the things that now strike me that I did not notice before. Looking back, living here, when I wrote January Moon, there's a lot of wildlife in it, and there's a lot of jagged stuff and references to snow and ice, and that happened a lot because I was remembering what it's like to live in a more wintry place, because I have not done that for a while. And then I moved here and it's all coming back to me, so that that helped there.
Yeah, I think I was actually thinking a lot lately about the landscape of my imagination, which is basically Upper Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, and southwestern China. So those, I mean, I'm not I'm going to write a Yooper poem now, right? But some things just end up in certain landscapes. I think that because I grew up with so much snow and beautiful desolation, I guess, that ends up that's my go-to place. The poem I read, Landfall at My Childhood Home, is actually, psychologically for me, that's about coming back to America from China, but it ended up being situated in the snow. It's actually the house in my mind that looks like Apollo is the house in the UP that I grew up in. But, so I think that, they don't get mushed together.
Yeah.
Mushed.
I found that when I first moved to Southern Illinois, I experienced a very strange homesickness. I have not lived in Norfolk, Nebraska since I graduated high school. And I know it looks like I just did, but it's actually been a very long time. And I found myself doing a very odd exercises when I was really feeling that homesickness. I closed my eyes and walked through the house I grew up in. And I looked at every little thing I could remember. And I'm working on that poem still, but...
That's how Sherlock Holmes remembers all the fancy things he remembers,
I am Sherlock Holmes.
She's super smart. Okay.
How do other writers inspire you? How do you draw inspiration from it, basically? How do they influence your writing?
I'm gonna be really honest now.
Do it.
I'm gonna be really honest now. I read stuff that's awesome, and I feel, okay, like, good because I'm reading something that's awesome, and happy because there's something amazing in the world, but also really, really jealous because somebody else is more awesome than me, and I don't like it, and so then I'm like, okay, I have to be a better writer now. And then I try.
Lots of nodding heads.
Yeah.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah.
Samesies.
And yeah. And I mean also, you know, like if I love someone's work, like I read it over and over again and I try to figure out actually like the specifics of how they do it. Like, are they using meter? Are they, you know, how are they telling a story? Like, what elements of a story are they telling me? Like, what kind of imagery are they using? What kind of leaps are they forcing my brain to make? And how are they actually achieving that? How many prepositions do they use? A guy that I know just wrote out like a 30-page paper on the use of punctuation in the wasteland, and it is serious. Okay, boring, but really, really useful. Like, really amazingly useful. But mostly, I'm jealous and petty, and I just want people to love me.
What she said. But also, I want to answer this in very much the same way. I do read a lot of other poets. I also try to spend some time looking at things that I don't like.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's
Things that have been published that I don't like so that I can understand what works about them. It may not be to my taste, but they work, and I want to know why.
Oh, that's really true, yeah.
And additionally, there's the whole jealousy thing. But it does work out for some people. Let me tell you a story. It's not my story. It's Michael Meyerhofer. He is widely published and super awesome and a very hilarious
I
person.
loaned you an anthology.
Yes, I love him dearly. He's a good friend of mine. When he was in grad school with me, he was 1 year ahead of me. And some of the other people in his class were not very kind to him. They thought that some of his stuff was overly pedestrian. They didn't get his jokes. They were super serious poets, and they were just not nice to him. Guess who's laughing now?
In their faces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has talked to me about that. He's not a petty man. He does not talk to other people about that, and he was probably horrified if he found out that I said this. But I say good for him because he kept on writing what he writes, and he kept on working at making it his stuff and making it as good as it can be, and other people appreciate it and other people publish it. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And I know that he feels really good about that because he didn't let these people change who he is.
We also, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just thought one.
Okay.
What made you both want to like be a writer? Like, what was there what was the moment you're like, I'm gonna be a writer?
Do you have a moment?
I find that question intriguing and difficult to answer. Part of the problem is that when I was growing up, my mom was an English teacher, so she always pushed me to do a good job with the most basic things, you know, things that seem basic to me now, but now I realize some of the things that I think are basic are not basic to other people. But I spent a long time just kind of seeing it as something that everybody does. You know, you have English classes in school. I just kind of thought everybody takes English classes and everybody can write. And then I went to college. And I found out that that's just not true. And so I just kept on writing because I like to write. And I kept on doing it because I felt the need to do it. I don't write because I want to. I write because if I don't, I will be extremely unhappy. I have to write.
Same, except so I always wrote and I always made little books and I always did all the little things, But I didn't get like serious about it, because I always sort of assumed that I would just accidentally become a brilliant writer. And then I was like 28, and I was like, why hasn't anyone discovered me yet? And then I was like, oh, I have never tried. So then I started working my butt off. So that was my moment when I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die without anyone recognizing how brilliant and special I am. So, yeah. You don't have to clap again. We just wanted to say thank you very much to Myrene. Thank you to the English department. Thank you to SMSU. Thank you, nice man with the lights and the camera.
Yes.
And thank you to all of you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I just want to say that both of these poets, these amazing poets, live here in Marshall, Minnesota.
That's true.
Even though this is the SMSU Visiting Writers series, so this is not the last reading. You will be hearing them, so stay tuned for other readings.